Our speaker, Bryan Felt, today has been synonymous with Seton Hall for 20 years. He oversees 14 varsity athletic teams, a vigorous intramural and recreation program, the athletic administration, and is now also charged with building a new practice basketball facility. I think he's going to tell us some things, I hope, about the exciting basketball championship NIT last year and about the success of some of the other teams, the diving teams, the golf team, and also the academic performance of the students. So, Bryan?
Thank you very much, Tom, and thank you everybody for having me here. You made my commute very easy today. I live 2.5 minutes down the road. I'm a New Providence resident, and so very happy to be here. Before I do that, though, Roger Burns, I want to make sure I give a shout out to you. You've got Seton Hall gear there in the back behind you. If I'm giving out extra credit, Roger gets it. So there we go. Well done. There we go. Share. Should be up, right? Okay, great. Tom, again, thank you for the introduction. I guess I'll start with this. I always ask, do we have any Seton Hall alumni here today in the crowd? We do? We have a couple? That's great, thank you. Do we have any Rutgers alumni? Okay, that's important for me to know because I will make sure to talk slow, okay? Don't worry, all right? Sorry, that's an old joke. I've been using it for years. It's not in its own. We got to have rivalries, right? Well, again, thank you very much for having me here. What I thought I'd do today is really just kind of walk through a very brief history, really, if you will, of sports at Seton Hall University. Give you just a little bit of background on Seton Hall. I won't bore you with too much history lesson. We'll then dive into the student-athlete, really student-athlete life, if you will. Talked about academics. We'll talk about facilities in terms of what it is that you need now in a college athletic department for facilities, and then kind of lead up to the current facility project, which Tom mentioned, our basketball facility that's currently underway, and then really kind of finish it off with college athletics today, which probably is a whole separate conversation, but I will touch on that a little bit, and then I'll take as many questions as you like. So thank you. So Seton Hall University, private Catholic school in South Orange, New Jersey. I know many of you probably know that. Founded in 1856, named after Sister Elizabeth Ann Seton, first American-born saint, Catholic saint, and it's the oldest diocesan university in the United States of America. Largest Catholic institution in the state of New Jersey. Began as an all-boys school, and in 1968 became co-educational, and women were admitted to the university. As we look at sports, I'll go kind of start to walk through sports. Currently, and I believe Tom mentioned it, we have 14 sports at Seton Hall University. It began back in the 1800s. The only sports really that were at Seton Hall at that time were club tennis and really just calisthenics and just things that were just going to a gym class kind of athletics. Eventually, baseball became really the first sport at Seton Hall University, and we have a very rich baseball history, which I will dive into. These are some pictures, obviously, to show. Basketball then, of course, became the prominent sport at Seton Hall University. It is still our flagship program, men's and women's basketball, certainly in terms of prominence and what is the most visible for the school. In our business, we like to call athletic department the front porch of a university. Certainly basketball is what that is for us. Many people that I meet across the country, across the world, know Seton Hall because of basketball. So it's obviously an incredible tool for us, and as one of the reasons why obviously it's the most prominent sport we have. As we go through the history of successful teams, there we go. I'll start here. In 1953, Seton Hall basketball won the NIT championship. At that time, the NIT championship was what we know today, the NCAA championship. It was the biggest thing going. It was at Madison Square Garden. Seton Hall beat St. John's in that game. We had some tremendous talent on that team. Again, winning a national championship is no easy feat, but we're talking the likes of Richie Regan, Walter Dukes, Arnie Ring, some absolute Hall of Famers in Seton Hall lore, if you will. And then as I talked about, and I'm going to kind of timeline this as we go through it, so we'll jump around from a couple sports, but as we go through our history, I talked about baseball having a very rich history at Seton Hall. In the late 60s and 70s, we went to 4 College World Series. So it was a really impressive sport. In the 70s, greats such as Rick Cerrone played for us, and obviously later a New York Yankee. But this team here was probably one that goes down in the history books in the 1980s. Members on this team, and I'm just going to list a few. One of them's a baseball Hall of Famer. That is Craig Biggio, played at Seton Hall. Mo Vaughn played at Seton Hall. John Valentin, Dana Brown was another one, and Martise Robinson. So just tremendous, tremendous baseball history. If anyone knows the Shepard family, Mike Shepard was a longtime coach at Seton Hall. His son, Rob Shepard, is currently our coach. We have, the Shepards are really synonymous with New Jersey baseball. Rob is the Seton Hall University coach, has been for over 20 years. And then you have his brother, who's the coach at Seton Hall Prep. His other brother is the coach at Norris Knowles. So you have a long, long history of baseball in New Jersey with the Shepard family. Soccer is probably one of our other prominent sports, if you will. We have over 13 NCAA appearances in soccer, 5 Big East championships, and in 2020, our men's soccer program went to the Elite Eight in the country, upsetting the likes of Virginia Tech and several other big programs along the way. So soccer for us has done a great deal. Really started, it was infused in the 80s with a lot of talent from Ireland and from Europe, obviously. Now I will tell you, if you look at our soccer roster, 85% of it is from overseas. It's an international game. It really is. We have great soccer here in New Jersey. Do not let me, please, I'm a soccer fanatic. My wife played soccer at Seton Hall, so the last thing I would do is put down soccer in the States. But you will find a lot of, obviously, tremendous talent overseas. So our team is really made up of a lot of kids from Italy, Sweden, across the board. We have a lot of talent from across the seas in soccer. A little bit on the women's side as well. Our women's program is a little newer, and when I say newer, it was started in 1994. And it's a program that has produced some talent, obviously. If anyone knows soccer, or women's soccer specifically, Kelly Smith is a graduate of Seton Hall. One of the all-time great soccer players in the world. Played for England, for the national team in England. She is a legend. And she went to Seton Hall University, led the conference in scoring, as you can imagine. So we've had some really rich soccer history as well. Women's basketball, I want to touch on that. Women's basketball, as I said, women really didn't start attending Seton Hall until the late 60s. Women's basketball really didn't get formed until the early 70s. And so women's basketball has a bit more doesn't have as long of a runway in terms of history, but we certainly have had our share. We've been to the Sweet 16 in the 90s. We were the WNIT runner-up a couple years ago. So our women's basketball program also has been built up a very good following. This is really where I think everything kind of kicks into gear when I talk about this team specifically. I'd be surprised if most of you have heard of this team. In 1989, Seton Hall University, coached by P.J. Carlissimo, one of the all-time, one of the greatest coaches in Seton Hall history, led this team to the national championship game, won the Final Four, beat Duke in the Final Four, and if anybody knows anything about that game, down by 17 points at halftime to Duke. We're talking the Duke with Christian Laettner, some really talented team. Came back and won the game by, I think it was 18. A truly amazing turnaround, one of the greatest in NCAA tournament history. This is a special team, and I point this team out, and really this team's always highlighted. I mean, I tell people all the time, I've been at Seton Hall now 20-something years. I don't know if I ever meet an alum that doesn't have a 1989 story. It's probably impossible not to. Where were you? How did you watch it? Whatever it might be, somebody's got a story. This team was incredibly special. The Big East, again, when we talk about Big East basketball, the Big East wasn't formed until 1978. So to have this kind of success early in that run and being in a conference with the likes of the St. John's of the day and the Georgetowns and Villanova, who had won the championship, I think it was 85 or 86. So you had some really, really big-time programs. And for Seton Hall University, within the first 10 years of this program, of the conference, to make it to the national championship game was extraordinary. Now we talk about the game itself, which is really the story, I suppose. They lost by 1 point in overtime to Michigan. Many of us will say that that's really not the true outcome of that game. I don't like to be, it's not sour grapes, but if anybody remembers that game, it's called a phantom foul. The phantom foul is forever known as a foul that was called on Gerald Green in the lane. Gerald Green was our shooting guard. If you watch that video 100 times, and I have, you'd be hard-pressed to find that foul. But that was the call. And our guys lived with that call, and our coach, P.J. Carlissimo, was first class. He handled it with first-class way. We never griped. None of our guys ever griped. We obviously accepted the loss and moved on, but a tough way to lose. But a story that really, if you will, catapulted our program. into the 90s and through the 2000s. From that point on, we went and won 2 Big East championships in the early 90s. We went to the tournament 4 out of the first 5 years of the 90s. We had really started to become a powerhouse in our own right, not only within the Big East Conference, but on a national scale. And that's really, I think you could pinpoint that moment. Our Seton Hall's first time ever making the NCAA tournament was 1988, the year before. So in our second year ever, we made it to the national championship game. So that moment really is one that we all look back on, is to say, why have we had such success in men's basketball? We certainly point back to this moment as kind of the creation and the start of that. And then obviously, as we move forward to kind of get to present day, as I don't want to do too much of a history lesson, in the 2000s, we had a great deal of success. We had a run where we went to 4 straight NCAA tournaments. We won the 2016 Big East Championship. To this day, by the way, if you ever get a chance and you can see the game, you can watch it on YouTube or something like that nowadays. That game goes down as one of the greatest basketball games I ever attended in person. That was Madison Square Garden, played Villanova, and just a tremendous basketball game. If you've seen that game, you'll know what I'm talking about, but worth watching. So that, again, catapulted a great class we had of young men who have gone on to play professionally and overseas. And that program, that team obviously has kind of helped catapult us to where we are today. Again, I'm going to get back to men's basketball as we talk about present day. We've had a lot of recent team success. Our swim team won the Big East Championship back-to-back in 17 and 18. We have won men's golf championship. We've won 2 of the last 3 years. Men's soccer, as I said, won Big East Championship and went to the Elite 8. We've had tremendous success across the board. Our softball program won the Big East Championship last year. So across the board, a lot of our teams have been very successful, not only within the Big East, but obviously, again, on a national scale. One team that I want to obviously highlight, if you watched Seton Hall this past year, an interesting, at the times as we get into today of college athletics, the NIT really isn't what the NIT used to be, right? We talked about the NCAA championship is the cream of the, it's the most important tournament out there. You play to make the NCAA tournament. A lot of teams nowadays, if they don't make the NCAA tournament, won't even play in the NIT. They'll decide to take a pass. And if you saw the news this past year, St. John's passed, several big programs passed. I think maybe Wake Forest might have been one. There was a couple teams across the country that decided to opt out of playing in the NIT because it just felt it wasn't worth it. And other variables, obviously, that I'll get to when we talk about today's college athletics. I'll be honest, it was originally our first inclination was to also take a pass at it. The guys, quite frankly, if anybody followed this year, we felt we were in the NCAA tournament. And quite frankly, I will still say to this day, we should have been in the NCAA tournament. We had a very bizarre year in men's basketball across college athletics this year in the sense that there were so many bid stealers than ever before. And a bid stealer is somebody that wins their conference tournament that normally wouldn't make the NCAA tournament. But if you win your conference tournament, the NCAA rules state you automatically get a bid. There was, I think it was a record actually, the most that have ever been in the history. I think there was close to 6 or 7 bid stealers this year. So that really hurt our chances. We felt we had a resume that should have been in there. We were really, quite frankly, we were in the next 4 teams out. We were in that grouping. So our guys got that news, and it was tough. But our coach today is a young, I call him a young man, geez, but Shaheen Holloway, who played for us in the late 90s, early 2000s. Shaheen said, you know what, guys, this is going to be your decision. If you want to play in the NIT tournament, you got to show up, though. I'm not going into this tournament if you're not going to show up. It's got to be full 100% we're in. But it's your decision, and you have literally 5 minutes to make it. I was literally waiting outside the door. I'm going to be outside, as he said with Mr. Felt, you're going to come out and tell us what you're going to do. They came outside, the captains came out and said, we want to play. I was very happy to hear that because I believe that we should have played. I think that's, it's an opportunity. There's a lot of teams that didn't make this tournament. We should take that opportunity to continue our season. And we did that. And we went on and we marched through this tournament, 5 games, and went all the way to Indianapolis where the championship game was and won the championship. Played in an incredibly contested game against Indiana State. I can tell you I was there. Terre Haute, Indiana is where Indiana State is. That's only about an hour and a half from Indianapolis. The building holds 9,300 people. They had 9,000 tickets. I'm not even kidding. There were about 300 people from Jersey otherwise. I was one of them. And it was as loud a game I've ever been part of, ever been around. Those fans from Indiana State were, we were talking, Tom and I were talking about Philadelphia fans before. Take Philadelphia and just flip them on their head. This was insanity. These folks came in, it's actually a funny joke. The AD at Butler, who's a good friend of mine, and who is where Butler plays, is Hinkle Fieldhouse, which is again another historic gymnasium, said to me when they cleaned up that gym the next day, they had never seen that many liquor bottles, like little. True story. He goes, the little liquor bottles you get, like used to get in the hotel, like a mini bar. He's like, we've never seen that much Jack Daniels in this gym ever. He's like, those people came in here and must have just, I mean, they were, you thought Jersey had a reputation. I've got a whole nother feeling on Indiana State. But let me tell you, they brought it, and the place was really loud. And for us to walk away with a win that game, we finished that game scoring the last 9 points straight to win the game. We were down 7. We won by 2. It was a tremendous basketball game. Again, if you ever get a chance to watch that game. Highest rated NIT championship game on ESPN in the last 15 years. So it was really great. It was great. Honestly, I'm so happy we did it because we got to showcase the talent of our program. Our new coach, Shaheen Holloway's only been coach for 2 years. We got to showcase that on the national stage. And we got to let people know a little bit more about Seton Hall that might not know. So right there, you take that opportunity. And I'm glad we did. I'm really glad we did. So that leads me to, we talked about teams, we did the history. I want to talk a little bit about student athletes, right? I think that's kind of part of the equation that gets forgotten, the student part, right? All of our students go to class, they get a degree. That's what college is all about. That's what we are. We're an education institution. I'm incredibly proud of this stat more than any other stat that we have. I could win as many games as you possibly could win. Nothing beats this, in my honest opinion, because this is what we're supposed to be doing. Our average GPA of our current student athlete base is a 3.531. That is a record in the history of our athletic department. That is also in the top percentile in the country of an athletic department. So our students are the best and the brightest. I say that, I don't say it just kind of half-assed. It's a real deal. Like, our students come from everywhere across the globe. We have students from over 20 countries. We have students from over 40 states in the country. They represent this 270-plus student athlete base that we have, and they do a tremendous job in the classroom. Obviously, we do provide any college athletic program at the Division I level. We'll provide academic resources for them, so we provide tutors and all of these things, and they major in everything from students that are going to go pre-med to students that might begin communications degrees to education degrees. We cover the gamut of degrees, and I can tell you, folks, we've had student athletes graduate, become Rhodes Scholars. We've had student athletes graduate and go to Harvard Medical School. I mean, we've had some really tremendous, talented people that have played a sport and gotten an education. So I just remind everybody about the importance of GPA and the importance of being a student first. And that's one of the big things we always remind our folks in the athletic department. The other side of college athletics is certainly your facility, who you are, what you have, what you can offer a student athlete, because we're recruiting, right? That's the name of our game in our lives in college athletics is we have to recruit all the time. We are always recruiting the next student athlete to come to Seton Hall. A big part of that picture is the facility. I used to say it for so long. When a student athlete is going to get recruited and comes to look at your campus, they're really looking at 3 things. They know where they're going to eat, they want to know where they're going to eat, where they're going to sleep, and they want to know where they're going to train and work out. That's what they want to know. Those are incredibly important to them. And I will tell you, at Seton Hall, facility-wise across the campus, if you haven't been to campus, those alums that were here, I welcome you to come back, because we have a brand new student center at the middle of campus, which is under 2 years old. It's incredible. It's a huge recruiting tool for us in athletics, but it's for anyone that comes to Seton Hall. The campus is just in a renaissance period. It's the amount of new buildings and construction that has gone on, and the academic profile of Seton Hall all plays into that. And the academic profile of Seton Hall, I will tell you, I graduated in the mid-90s. I would not get into Seton Hall today. I can guarantee you that. That's how much better the school has become. But when we talk about athletic facilities specifically, in the last 12 years at Seton Hall, we have undertaken almost $70 million worth of construction in athletic facilities. It's astounding, really, if you add it all up. Everything's been touched, everything. We have, you'll see some of these pictures that just do a little bit of the story, but that's a brand new weight room, dedicated weight room just for our student athletes, for 270 students. That's a dedicated weight room. We have these, this is the latest. We built this about a year ago. It's a recovery room. I get it if you roll your eyes at this, but it's part of the game nowadays. It's an arms race. You have to have what you have to have. Recovery rooms are important nowadays to athletes. They need that time once they've trained and they've practiced to recover. We have massage chairs, zero gravity chairs, everything you could possibly imagine, compression tools and all of them for their muscles and all that on their legs. You go in that room, there's, like the calming music and lights, but it's a big part of the game nowadays. And I can tell you that I've had students when they're on recruiting trips want to see the recovery room. That's how important it is. So we built that just about 2 years ago, and it's been a big success. Walsh Gym, historic Walsh Gymnasium, 1940s gym. It's a classic. It's an absolutely beautiful old building. We did some construction about 4 years ago to renovate Walsh Gymnasium. It was the original gym. The original seats were in there from the 40s. I mean, we had done some things. We had new floors and new baskets over the years, but for the most part, the gym was really intact. We took out all the original seats from the 40s, put beautiful new blue seats. We took out some of the bleacher seating because not a lot of folks like to sit on bleachers. I get it. It's uncomfortable. I didn't like it either. But we replaced all the seating, put a new floor down, redid everything, put in a center hung scoreboard, video boards, all of the latest technology, literally about a $7 to $8 million project to renovate the gym, and it's fantastic. It's the home of our women's basketball program and our women's volleyball team. And it's a beautiful building. If you haven't come to see a game on campus, I highly recommend it. It's worth the experience. Down here on the right, again, you might not be able to see some of the pictures. We have an indoor golf room. Again, we've won the Big East Golf Championship 2 of the last 3 years. In the Northeast, we have some challenges, right? We can't really get out and play golf in February. We can't play golf really in late November, even December, depending on the weather. So you have to have kind of a facility that can help that program. We built a brand new, this is about 10 years old, indoor golf facility. Fully donated project. Indoor putting greens, which are actually currently about to get renovated again and upgraded. And then hitting bays, TrackMan software, all of the things in golf that you need, I guess, to become an elite golfer. I wouldn't know. My game's not that good, but a tremendous space that our student athletes, men's and women's, we have a women's golf program. Men's and women's golf can go in there and train in the off season, work on their game. We have computers there looking at their swing, everything you could possibly imagine. So those are just a little bit. We also have a brand new training room that was built. So these are all the facility pieces you have. Training rooms now, you have to have not only your average training tables and your training staff and all these kind of things. We have hydrotherapy pools. We have a cold pool. We have a hot pool. We have a treadmill in a pool. We have everything you could possibly have to train at a high level. I can tell you that we literally mirrored our training room. We were building a new training room at the same time the Jets were moving to Florham Park. And we worked a lot closely with them to see what they were installing in that room to get a sense of what we should be putting in our room, because we wanted to have top level equipment. So we have mirrored an NFL team in terms of what we offer our student athletes. That brings me to today. This is, without question, the largest athletic facility project we've undertaken in, over 50 years. This is a $55 million project. This encompasses men's and women's basketball, and we are building a brand new training facility and enhancing all of our current women's facilities. Now, again, Walsh Gym is where women's play, and we did that facility about 4 or 5 years ago. This is, and again, if you know campus, and I understand some of you might not, this is essentially the back corner of our campus. Actually, Newark is right over the tree line here, so because our campus is right there in South Orange, backs up to Newark. This is the back of the field house, which is our general use field house for all students. We have taken the back portion of that field house and we've kind of popped it out, and we are building, it's almost kind of in an L shape here, a basketball practice facility. When I say basketball practice facility, I get it if the thought is, well, that just seems kind of trivial. Like, do you really need that? You have a court, right? It's a ball, you roll it out. I get it. I'm with you. Nowadays, in the college athletics landscape, we are one of the last of 3 schools in the Big East that don't have one of these yet. So everyone's been, it's the name of the game. If you're going to play basketball at the Division I level, in the Big East, at our level, you really need to be able to offer something like this. St. John's has announced plans to build one. They're a little bit down the road, and DePaul has announced plans to build one. None of them have started construction yet. I'm thankful that we've gotten this off the ground. This project has already gone on for a little over a year. It is expected to wrap in November, which is ahead of schedule, so I'm going to knock on wood because I truly don't know if I believe that yet, but it would be phenomenal if it can. This will house our men's basketball program. This will be their home. And I will tell you that a student athlete today, specifically at a men's basketball level, at our level, they're going to spend a lot of time in this building. This will have their locker room, their lounge. Yes, they have a lounge. This will have an area where they eat, like a small little commissary area, kitchens and all that kind of stuff. They'll have all the offices for our staff. It will have obviously the court, the practice court. It's a full-size court with 3 half-size courts for separate training, while there's also the full court being used. All of the audio-visual technology that you need in there for that kind of thing. You will also have their training room, so they'll have a dedicated training room with hydrotherapy pools and all of those kind of things, a sauna, all of these things. These are all competitive advantages that you're trying to put forth in athletics. I can tell you Providence built one about 6, 7 years ago. Providence put a barber shop in theirs, so the guys could get haircuts. We did not go that far. But I can tell you that's kind of some of the stuff you see. It really is. So this will have everything. I mean, to the kids, though, half the time, most important thing is, do you have enough chargers? And I kid you not, that will be the question they will ask. Every locker room has chargers for iPhones, iPads. There's chargers everywhere throughout this building. That's what they look at. You have to kind of look at it through the eyes of an 18 to a 21-year-old. So those are important aspects to it. But everything will be in there. They'll have their own laundry room in there. Everything is fully encased in that. Their own their own strength and conditioning room. So weight room is in there for all men's basketball. In addition to that, as part of the $55 million project, we will enhance all of women's basketball facilities. They will get a brand new locker room, brand new lounge, brand new film room. We also have a film room in here where teams watch film. So across the board, everything will be done on the women's side as well. So I wanted to highlight that project because that's currently what we're in the middle of. It's a tremendous undertaking. We were tasked to raise a good portion of the dollars for this facility. We are nearing that completion, and we have done a tremendous job. I'm really proud of our staff and all we've been doing to hit those numbers to where we need it to be so construction could start and continue. So it's been a big task for everybody, not only in our athletic department, but at the university. Seton Hall has been in the phase of a strategic plan in which our president several years ago identified athletics as one of the top 3 strategic pieces in that plan, and specifically this facility. Because the importance of basketball on a university such as Seton Hall is it's incredible. As I said, the front porch, it really does offer a great deal to our alumni and to our student base. Also, just some pictures, obviously, so you have an idea of the inside. That would be the new locker room up here on the right, the lounge on the left, and the practice court down here on the right. So it's going to be state of the art. It's going to be incredible. We're really excited about it and looking forward to it. So I'm going to leave that slide up there, but I'm going to just kind of finish, and then we'll get into questions. Kind of just talking about college athletics today. I'm sure we have a well-read group here. You've seen the many changes in the different world that we're living in college athletics. And I can tell you college athletics today, college sports basically have currently in the last 2 years and will continue to go through the greatest changes in its history. And really there's 3 letters that really summarize that, and those letters are NIL, name, image, and likeness. Otherwise is known as paying players. That is the world we are in today. There's no other way around it. And I tell this to people all the time. I am out trying to explain this. I talk about this topic till I'm blue in the face. And it's really what I deal with 99% of my day is name, image, and likeness. And really the idea of paying student athletes. Because if you're not doing that now, I can tell you, you're just telling yourself you're not going to be competitive. And as hard as that might sound, that is the truth. We have been fully engrossed in NIL since it was created about 2 years ago. I can tell you members of our men's basketball program have all been paid, and they all get paid. Now, importance on this. I'm not going to try and get too far into the weeds on it, and certainly if you have questions, we will. How name, image, and likeness works. I'm going to give you what it was supposed to be, it was intended to be, and then we'll kind of talk about what it's morphed into. And I think at the very crux of what name, image, and likeness made some sense. It made good sense. Because if Tom's a student at Seton Hall, and we're both students at Seton Hall, Tom plays basketball, but I don't. I was always allowed, and still I could always go out and make money. Say I was an artist or a musician or a fashion designer, whatever it might be. I could go sell my product. I could go push my thing. I could go push my music, sell it online. I could sell my artwork somewhere. I could do all of those things. Tom couldn't because he played basketball. That was an NCAA violation. He wasn't able to go earn any additional revenue or any kind of income like that. So that was, perhaps many would say, a little bit of an archaic rule. So in the grand scheme of things, it made sense, right? And if Tom was good, Tom wanted to sell his autograph or whatever it was. I could sell mine. Again, maybe people didn't want it. But Tom, because he played basketball, he could do that. He couldn't do that, but now he can. That's essentially what name, image, and likeness is. It's basically allowing the student athlete to have the same exact rights as any other student. And because they're student athletes, they certainly have great opportunities, right? They're our basketball players. Listen, I can tell you, I sometimes, as our new team just came in this couple months ago, I'm still learning everybody on the team. I have a 17-year-old at home. He can tell you every player on that team. I don't know how, because of social media usually is how. He just learns who these young men are, and because they have a very high profile. So obviously the opportunity to make money off that profile is now what's been granted. But what has happened, and again, at the crux, great, makes tons of sense, right? If that kid wants to go sell his autograph, do an autograph signing, go run a camp, go appear at a camp and get paid, whatever it might be, makes tons of sense. That's what it was supposed to be. That is happening, don't get me wrong. It's happening, and that's okay. But what really, truly has happened with NIL is you put a rule out there with you put a new mandate out there with very little rules around it. And when you give a mandate to the world of college athletics, we're going to go figure out how we can beat the other person to the punch, right? You're going to go figure out how you can be better at it. And what has started to happen is the creation of collectives. And collectives are organizations outside of a college athletic department, so not within Seton Hall, made up usually of alumni or supporters that raise support and can pay student athletes. It's happening across the board. There's not one team in the Big East that doesn't have a collective. There's not a team at the Division I level that doesn't have some form of a collective. And those collectives essentially can write checks and pay student athletes. And what has become customary is they're telling them how much they can make if they come to said institution. So it's become a really big part of the recruiting world. That was actually the one rule that always was out there, is it shouldn't be used as a recruiting inducement. I can tell you that it's happening. This stuff used to happen back in the day, we used to always say behind the curtain, right? The old teams at Kentucky and Louisville and all this kind of stuff, they were always we figured they were paying guys behind the curtain. That's now it's out in plain sight now. It's just a different world. And so what we've done at Seton Hall, which I could talk to, is yes, there was a collective that was created by some really dedicated alumni that went out and has started to raise money for it. The challenge there is that we're also trying to raise money as a university for all of the different facilities and the $55 million practice facility and all these kind of things. So you really have a balance issue, right? We can actively raise money. I can go out and actively raise money for NIL, but I can't take it. The money can't come to me because it's an internal, and I'm using an internal gift then to pay an athlete. That's another rule that's something you can't do. So the money has to go to the collective. They handle payments. I get it might sound confusing, but it's not meant to be easy. It's what the world is right now. I do think we're going to see a lot of changes in NIL as it continues to evolve. And really, quite frankly, if you've read the news, there's been so many lawsuits from student athletes over time and organizations against the NCAA, which, by the way, is the reason the NCAA really just enacted NIL the way they did. They were getting sued too many. There were too many antitrust lawsuits where they just said, you know what, we'll just make it legal. We don't want to keep getting sued. But what's going to start to happen in college athletics is you're going to have something which is revenue sharing. You're going to start to see revenue sharing, where now the athletic department can take a portion of its revenue and pay players from its revenue. The intent is to make it cleaner. The intent is to give athletic departments a little bit more control over the wild, wild west that is collectives and NIL. I don't think collectives and NIL will go away. I think they'll still be a part of the whole equation. But what you're going to start to see happen, and I think it could be sooner rather than later, I think you'll probably see it happen in a year, within the next year, where athletic departments will take their revenue and be able to share it with those athletes. And I think there's a lot of questions that are in that, is to determine, well, how do you do it? How does that look? That all still has to be determined. But there is a House settlement that is on the table right now that we expect the judge to agree to, could be as soon as this week even, where I think that'll change the whole landscape of this business. And it's already changed so much in the last 2 years, but you will start to be able to pay your student athletes from inside, basically from your own budget. You'll take your revenues that you bring in from ticket sales, whatever it is, and you'll be able to put it right into the pockets of student athletes. So that's college athletics today. I mean, it used to be we were just worried about building nice facilities and making sure our campus looked great. And don't get me wrong, we're still doing that. But right now, when a student looks at a school, I said my phrase earlier, you want to know where you're going to eat, where you're going to sleep, where you're going to work out and train. Nobody's really asking that anymore. They're asking how much they're going to get paid. And that's truly, and it might be sad to many of you, and trust me, to me it is too, but it's the new world, and I still got to get kids through college, so I'm going to figure it out, and we're going to try and keep on working. And Seton Hall is committed to making sure that it does work, and to the best of our ability, and to make sure we stay competitive in this landscape. It's not going to be easy. We're not going to be able to keep up with the football schools, because that's a whole other animal, but we will remain competitive, and we'll find ways to kind of get to the finish line. So it may sound like I'm ending on a grim note, but that's college athletics today. So what I thought would be best is to open it up to any questions you might have, and I'm happy to answer anything you can bring to the table. Thank you. All right, there you go.
the routine is we got to stop here so the camera can see us. Anyway, thank you. So you're the athletic director, right? Okay. Tell me two things. Number one, what are the athletic director's duties? Because you said it was 99% NIL, and I would have guessed it was 110% building that building.
Yeah.
And then the second thing, what are your criteria for success? Because is it winning games, blah, blah, blah? Two questions.
Absolutely, great questions. Yeah, you know, and Mitch, thank you for bringing that up. I didn't really provide, I mean, Director of Athletics and Recreation at Seton Hall for 5 years. I spent 16 years there, but previously in fundraising specifically, raising money for the athletic department and for the university. And I was the athletic director at St. Peter's for 2 years and then got to come back to Seton Hall. So I'm a Seton Hall alum. I'm Seton Hall through and through. Met my wife there, married on the campus. It's endless. So anyway, I make the joke that 99% of my time is NIL. And part of me is really not kidding. It's such a massive focus right now because we have to be so competitive in that. But the daily makeup of an AD, it's changed so much over the years. I think primarily, I'm worried about a staff of 90 people within our department, right? You have coaches, administrators, and then the other 100, and then the 270 student athletes. That makes up my focus, really. You know, if I take the joke of NIL out of it, that's where everything lies. I mean, that's what we have to do. Like, the most important aspect that I have every single day is making sure that our student athletes are having the greatest experience they can have. And I will tell you that means more to me than anything. And we spend a lot of time investing in the experience for our student athletes. I mean, even myself, I do breakfast with 12 student athletes a month, and we do kind of like a random selection. We try and get 12 student athletes that I can talk to, have breakfast, buy them breakfast. That's legal now, and hear from them to know if their experience is really what it should be, and hear feedback, and not always good feedback. If I have to hear negative feedback, so that I primarily am worried about that. But yes, the external sides of my job involve fundraising. I think if you can't fundraise now, being an athletic director is going to be a pretty hard job because it's such a big part of it. You have to fundraise for facilities, you have to fundraise for programs, you have to fundraise for NIL. So I spend a lot. I do spend a lot of time fundraising. My wife will tell you I spend a lot of time traveling. I spend a lot of time at dinners and events at night, and I love that. I mean, it's kind of my background, but it's a really big part of it. You asked about how do I look at if we're successful or not. What are the metrics, perhaps, I guess? And then there's a myriad of them, honestly. I had a slide up there, though, that showed a 3.5 GPA. That's a big metric. I know we're doing pretty good, right? Yeah, wins and losses are certainly on the list. I'd be kidding myself if I didn't say that, because I can tell you right now, if our men's basketball program had been abysmal for so long, I don't know if I'd be here still. But certainly wins and losses mean a great deal. Men's basketball success, without question, is at the top of the list. It's our flagship program. I can tell you that nobody really complains to me if, you know, the volleyball team didn't have a winning season last year. I wish they would. I love volleyball, but they don't. At the end of the day, the men's basketball moves the needle. So that's critically important. So I think those are metrics that I look at every day. I look at the culture of our department. Maybe not a metric you can measure, but I look at the culture of our athletic department. You know, is our staff, do we work in the right kind of culture? Our student, and again, it goes back to student athlete experience. If I feel that's there too, that's something I measure on it as much as I can. So those would be the things I think I look at. I think I got everything on that question, hopefully. All right, thanks, Mitch.
Thanks. It was a great talk. I didn't realize all this went on behind the scenes and probably keeps you busy. Seems like, I don't know, probably 20 or 30 years ago, they passed a law where you have to spend as much on the female students as you did on the males. First question is it still going on, and what do you do in that effect?
Absolutely. Thanks, John. Yeah, good question, John. Title IX. And that's what I talked about when I was talking about revenue sharing. I think that's one of the biggest variables we're waiting to see how this is going to work. So yes, Title IX will always and still does exist. Incredibly important. You have to have an equal amount of women's opportunities to male. And you really, a part of Title IX that people have to realize, you have to mirror your enrollment at your university to some extent. So you have to represent that enrollment. We have a higher female representation at Seton Hall than we do have a male. We do have equally amount to that female sports. So you have to have a certain amount. So for example, if I was to go add a men's sport tomorrow, I have to add a women's. I can't just go add men's lacrosse without any women's lacrosse. So there are those kind of things in Title IX. Very important. You know, gender equity is incredibly important. It's going to be interesting to see how Title IX lives within revenue sharing. Unknown territory, right? I think many think it's going to be a massive part of it. I think some people think, well, if the revenues are being created primarily from, let's use football as an example, at a football school, why should, you have to divvy it evenly between men's and women's athletes? So I think that conversation is going to come. I think those lawsuits are going to come, not to be pessimistic, but I just think that's what we have in our future. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see how that lives moving forward. But so absolutely Title IX exists, incredibly important, mindful of it all the time. Always have to be mindful of making sure that you have an equal amount of opportunities for men and women. So.
He's a BC, Steve McCabe. I have to say, he's a BC grad. So many things you said resonate with me. And I had many, many questions about NAL, and you answered almost all of them. So I get to ask about my next door neighbor. His name is Tomas Sestero. He's going to Seton Hall to play baseball. But the thing that amazed me about that is he signed a letter of intent as a sophomore in high school. And this is so foreign to everything I know about high school. He was, by the way, he and his parents were tremendously impressed by the Shepherd legacy at your school. But what is getting sophomores to sign a letter of intent all about? And especially, I'm kind of curious in baseball. He's a great kid, and I watched him play as soon as he started playing for the varsity. But how did they pick Masi as a sophomore and decide that he's going to get a full scholarship to Seton Hall?
Is he a pitcher?
Yes.
Yeah, there you go. My next question, is he a lefty? Is he a lefty? Okay, all right, but pitcher's usually good enough. Sure.
If I can say one more thing about Mozzie. When he started out, he was a reliever who played center field. So he played center field, and then late in the game, they said, come on in, and he pitched relief. And then he got better, and then he would be in a rotation, play every game, and then when he wasn't playing, he'd go back out to center field. He's a great baseball player, really good.
That's great.
And baseball wasn't his favorite sport. He was a basketball player, and from a very young age, people said, play baseball, play baseball.
Yeah. Well, no, that's a good point when it comes to the world of recruiting. And you don't see it as much, honestly. You used to see coaches trying to sign kids as soon as they could. But the earliest you could really sign is your sophomore year to an extent. In baseball, I asked if he was a pitcher. That's as valuable as a position in the game of baseball right now, specifically in college baseball. You want to try and get arms. The Shepherd family, as you pointed out, does a tremendous job, but they have a tremendous reputation. They do a very good job recruiting in the state of New Jersey specifically. If you look at our baseball program, it's probably 80 to 90% local, New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania. And to why he committed this early, I wouldn't be able to speculate or have that answer, but I will probably say that he's a young man that knew where he wanted to go, knew what he wanted to do, probably didn't want to go through the chaos of recruitment, which it can be for a young man or a young woman, anybody at that age. And if we were so sold on him, our coaches were so sold on him and that they were able to make that offer, that means that there was a connection between those two. I will tell you, most will sign usually in their junior year. But yeah, you'll have some sophomores that'll commit. And that's the difference, by the way, the NIL, name, image, and likeness. There's also the NLI, the National Letter of Intent, which still exists, and a student can commit to a school that early. We love it because it's one less student we got to go, one less spot they got to go fill for in the class of, whatever class he's going to be in. So, yeah, and he's a pitcher. That's probably the best answer. I really should have actually just given you and left it at that, because those are pretty valuable, especially if he's a lefty. But yeah, so that's great. Whoever's next.
Okay, we're talking about the Supreme Court, the most recent ruling where students should be paid, and the five conferences that signed up for it. Yours isn't in there yet. It will be in there. The point is, they're supposed to be given $2 million. That was a number was in the to every school that's in playing these sports, and that's supposed to be distributed among the athletics. That's a tough job because you've got 14. So God bless. I hope you can do good with that. The other thing is, this year, I'm a Syracuse grad. My wife and my son are Seton Hall grads. So I followed the Seton Hall team since 1953 when all the Catholic schools in the Archdiocese of Newark were Seton Hall fans, so I've been following them that long. The thing that I wanted to say is this year's team was terrific, and you're going to have a second hard job keeping your coach. He is terrific. So, get some friends, talk to people, keep him.
Yeah.
He's very good. And your announcer, the announcer on Channel 5 and all this, is a Seton Hall grad, John Fenta. So if you guys can ever see a sports announcer, you would love him. Seton Hall guy.
That's great.
Okay.
Thank you, John. I'm glad you brought up John Fanta. He's one of my favorites. Actually, I have the reputation. I hired John Fanta as a student, and now to see him on Fox broadcast is pretty cool. So John is an alum of ours. A little other known fact, if you didn't know, if anyone knows, Dick Vitale, Seton Hall alum. So we have some folk. Bob Lee, who was on ESPN. We have a lot of great television alumni that were Seton Hall folks. To your point, a couple things that you mentioned there. Coach Holloway, who's on our team now, has a tremendous job. As I said, played there. Big part of my job, I think might have been Mitch might ask before, is also hiring and making sure you have the right personnel. We call him Shaheen Holloway. He is the perfect fit for Seton Hall. He embodies everything that we're all about. I actually have also the privilege of having to hire him. I've hired him twice. I hired him at St. Peter's as the coach there, and then I got to hire him again when I came to Seton Hall. So it's been a great relationship. I hope we can hold on to him as well. I'm confident that we will, obviously. Remind me, I'm trying to remember the other part of the question. Right, thank you. So so we talk about the lawsuit, and John brought it up. There's two aspects to that lawsuit, and you made that point that the 5 power conferences, I call them the football 5, because I would put the Big East up there any day when you talk about basketball. So the football 5 are the named conferences in that lawsuit. The lawsuit requires 2 payments. There is the $2 billion in payments of back payments that will be owed to all of these folks that are in the lawsuit, and also then the payments that will be having to be paid forward. The football 5 and the NCAA are going to take the brunt of that back payment, but all of the membership in the NCAA, in which we are, will also have to take a little bit of a burden on from that payment. And that doesn't sit well with a lot of people because we weren't even named in the darn thing, but it's part of the deal when you're part of a membership group. So we are currently working on modeling how that looks. We will be having to make some sort of payment. The Big East has really kind of been the leader for that in terms of how we do it. And then also the other part will be how do we then, to your point, John, separate those payments and work on paying athletes moving forward. As I said, Title IX is going to be a big piece of that. It's going to help us determine how we're going to be looking at that. Certainly basketball will be the primary focus because that's where the revenue is coming from. But yeah, we're going to have to determine how that looks moving forward in terms of all these different sports and how they're going to be compensated. So a massive challenge, no question about it. Thanks, Jen.
Thank you. Mike Martin, thanks for an excellent presentation. I think we should all get our sneakers out and start practicing. 2 questions about process. One is, if I'm a top athlete in basketball, do I put out a auction document like I'm a house for sale? Or is there a video to go with that to show my accomplishments? Or is it more eclectic, depending upon the needs of the school? And and do they hire agents now to represent them? To what degree has that happened? The second thing is this a continuum? In other words, you hear a lot of transfers in 2nd and 3rd year college. Is it just an ongoing process where the next bidder that comes in for their services comes in and outbids the college they're at? So those 2 questions about. Yeah.
Thank you, Mike. You brought up transfer portal, which I want to get to, and I'm glad you did. Jeez. Yeah, so nowadays, I always tell people this. I will have a dozen times a year, I'll have an alum or someone could even be somebody I know here in New Providence, can be my neighbor, will tell me, hey, you got to look at this kid. And I'm like, first off, I don't do the recruiting. Don't tell me to go look at it. Well, I'll tell the coach, sure. But I could guarantee, and I tell this to them every time, if they'll tell me, they'll go, you got to see this kid. You got to tell the coach about this kid. Tell the coach about this kid. The coach will know. They always know. There are very few diamond in the roughs anymore. So getting your profile out there has become easier than ever. Social media certainly plays a massive role in that. But I think really, if you're a coach now and you're specifically, as you brought up basketball, you know. You know who the top kids are. You know what you're looking at. You have a full staff of assistant coaches that are out there scanning the country, know every major AAU coach there is across the landscape, and they know who the best players are, and they certainly know it from not only word of mouth or connections or social media. It's known. It's very rare that you find a diamond in the rough. In any sport, by the way, in any sport. There are so many services and recruiting services that you can find anything now. In fact, I'll tell you, one of the greatest sports, I always make the joke for recruiting, is swimming. I mean, do you really need to go watch somebody swim, right? You just, at the end of the day in swimming, you just need to know what the times they have, right? What are the times? My swim coach doesn't leave the state of New Jersey to recruit. He just goes online and he goes to look at times. Like he can find out every time, everything's registered in every high school in the country, every swim club in the country. He knows who's swimming what. And not just in the country, he can look across overseas. I mean, we have kids from Israel, Belgium on our swim team, and it's endless because he can just go online and find who's got great times. And then he can recruit them virtually. It's that easy. And then they take a visit, and then they come see if they like it or not. So it's swimming recruiting. I kind of make that joke. It's pretty easy. So yeah, you usually know. Everyone kind of know, and that's kind of, the word gets out there pretty easily in that regard. The second part of your question again, I'm sorry, remind me. Transfers, yes. Transfer portal. That's really the big variable that has made NIL even crazier than I think it was intended to be. Because now, you have the kind of like the home shopping network, we make the joke, right? If I don't like where I'm playing right now, or if I don't get enough playing time, I'm just going to go into the transfer portal. Because the transfer portal, it used to be a rule that you had to sit out a year if you were going to go transfer. Made sense to an extent, right? Because you committed to an institution, they invested a lot in you, and maybe it didn't pan out, and now you're going to go somewhere else, and usually you had to sit out a year. They originally changed that, except for 5 sports: basketball, football, ice hockey, lacrosse, where you had to sit out still. Then they eventually changed that, and they made it just an across-the-board deal where you can play right away. So you can transfer as many times as you want now. Used to also be you can transfer once. Now you can transfer endless, which is kind of crazy. I don't think it's a great thing for a student-athlete, to be my personal opinion. I mean, let's not forget, we talked about it, that GPA number on the board. It's going to be you're going to have a hard time keeping up a good GPA if you're changing schools, every 6 to 8 months. So that's a challenge. I think educationally, I don't know if we're really doing it any good for the student-athlete. But you can do it, and we're seeing it happen. And you can do it within conference. You can do it anywhere you want. So I think combine the transfer portal with NIL, it became really challenging because you might not be leaving because of your playing time. You might be leaving because you want to go see if you can make more money somewhere else. So I might put my name in the transfer portal. Like, I'm going to use Tom as an example playing basketball. And Tom says, well, I'm not getting that much. Seton Hall's paying me, I don't know, just put it $50,000. I might see if I can make more money somewhere else. So I'm going to put my name in this portal. And then I can tell you it is talk about Wild Wild West. I mean, it's a free-for-all. You'll have coaches calling you left and right if you were any good, trying to see what your number is and if they can get you to come to their school. The transfer portal is also a new piece that I shouldn't have left out when we talk about the new day and age of athletics, because that combination with NIL has made it even more chaotic.
So you talked about metrics of success for your program, and I'm very delighted and impressed with the academic side. To me, sports is highly competitive, and even kids that think they're the greatest thing since sliced bread, their chance of making it in professional athletics, it's low. 1 out of 100, or I don't know, it's something like that. So do you have a metric of your success in how your graduates fare in life? Meaning, these kids that athletics was everything for them, but all of a sudden, they're nothing, and they've not gotten trained for for succeeding in life. Forget about sports. Now I'm rambling here, but you get my point. It's compared to all this competition with transfer portals and all this other stuff. It'd be hard for you to even think about that, but do you?
Thank you for that question, Bill. Yes, the answer to that quickly is yes. We think about it all the time. We talk about student-athlete experience, I mentioned several times. We talk about student-athlete experience, but we also talk about making sure that our student-athletes are successful in life, without question. And I'm going to give you some examples, Bill. One of the great pieces, I guess, is a story. So some of you might remember a basketball player that played for Seton Hall in the early 90s. He was from Lithuania. His name was Arturas Karnišovas. One of our most successful alums, a guy, 6'10" guy that could shoot threes like nothing I've ever seen to this day. Just a tremendous talent. And Arturas is a friend I still talk to this day. He's currently the president and general manager of the Chicago Bulls. He's been incredibly successful in life after basketball. And Arturas has come back on several occasions to talk to our program. And Shaheen knows Arturas and brings him back, but he's come back over the years to talk to our teams. And he will be very direct. And he will stand there in front of 13 young men, and he'll say, I'm pretty sure I can guess that all of you think you're going to go pro. And I'm 100% sure that none of you will. And that, they usually wake up pretty quick, because when they hear that, they're like, what is this guy talking about? But I mean, now they're hearing it from a guy that's the general manager and the president of the Chicago Bulls. And he's incredibly direct with them. And listen, the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of basketball players in our history, I can probably name under 15 that went to the NBA, right? So, I mean, put it in that context, right, Bill? So, I mean, we hammer that home a lot. Now, granted, do a lot of them get playing opportunities and go play in Europe? They do. And it's a phenomenal career path for them, for the next 10 to 15 years of their lives to be able to go and do that. I also see young men that have that opportunity, but they really struggle to adjust to life overseas. That's a whole nother, part of this. So we really work a lot, and I'm talking specifically basketball, but I do want to talk about the whole entire student athlete population. But in basketball, we really stressed a lot of that. Like, Shaheen's really good with that in terms of explaining to them, listen, you guys are going to go over to a foreign country. You're going to have to learn how to adapt. You have to embrace it. You have to become part of the environment. You can't be just standing, you really have to find a way to enjoy it, or you're going to lose it and you're going to want to come home. Because listen, a lot of those young men are going over and making, good, healthy 6-figure salaries, and in some cases 7 figures playing overseas. So it could be a tremendously lucrative career, if the right talent is there, and if you're willing to go and do it. But a majority, to your point, Bill, don't get that chance. They don't get that chance to play professionally in the United States. They don't get that chance to play professionally in Europe, and they have to go out into the workforce. And a lot of them have spent so much time thinking that they're going to be a basketball player for the rest of their lives that they're not usually equipped for that next step. To get to that point, we do this kind of thing for all of our student athletes. Our student athletes, we have a leadership and development program. We have an individual in our department that's their focus. Associate AD, and they're in charge of all leadership and development for student athletes. We create financial workshop programs for them internally, and I'm talking basics from, managing a checking and savings account to all the way to, personal finance management to, so mutual funds and so on. I mean, it's endless, and we make it mandatory. And then we provide programs for them that are voluntary, because we'll see who's really interested in learning more. But we do things like that. We do interview workshops. We do resume building workshops, stuff that you might think most of them understand already, right? You'd be surprised. A lot don't. And we really spend a lot of time. We make it a required thing for them to all attend, learn how to understand these things. Every student athlete goes through a mock interview. We try to make sure that they've gone through an interview. They know what to do. We'll do an interview setting in an office. We'll do an interview setting at a dinner table. Trying to explain to them the proper etiquette at a dinner table, proper things that they need to know. Because listen, if you're a student athlete, you're going to get opportunities. I tell people all the time, student athletes are highly sought after in the workforce. They have a leg up in a way. I mean, these are young men and women that understand the challenges of a schedule, training full-time, going to school full-time, competing on a full-time schedule. I mean, there's no off-season anymore in college athletics. The volleyball player that plays the season in the fall begins training in the winter and throughout the spring and the summer. And now there's off-season schedules. I mean, our baseball team plays a handful of games in the fall. Our soccer team plays a handful of games in the spring. They're still competing even in the off season because you're just trying to get better. So they know how to handle their schedule. They're versatile. There's a lot of qualities that they bring to the table. So we make sure, A, that they know that, and that they're prepared to know how to really, flaunt that, if you will, and showcase it so that people understand the importance of hiring a student athlete. So yes, thank you for that question, Bill. It's incredibly important, and we train and work on that every day. Go ahead, please.
I went to Wagner College.
That's great. Seahawks.
Okay, Seahawks. Yeah, and congratulate you for the high academic standards. I'm sure it wasn't that way when P.J. Carlissimo was there. And same at Wagner with Luther Wright. same issues. And a couple of quick, can you tell us one about payouts that you pay, like games like where Wagner comes to your facility and other schools? And also, then basically the payouts, just, and considering extra sports like lacrosse or water polo.
Yeah.
And also, why do you give up tennis at Seton Hall?
Gotcha.
At St. Peter's, sorry.
No, yeah.
My friend is bitter at that.
Oh, boy. Okay, yeah, absolutely. A couple there. Well, first of all, Wagner, head coach of men's basketball at Wagner is Donald Copeland, a Seton Hall alum. And little known fact, I think we have 5 or 6 Seton Hall alumni that are head coaches in Division I. One I will point out is Dan Hurley, who's won 2 national championships back-to-back, and he was at Wagner too. And it's us and Duke. Yeah, that's right. It's us and Duke have the most alumni that are head coaches currently in the NCAA, which is a pretty little cool stat for us. But so you brought up what are called game guarantees. So game guarantees, and I've been on both sides of a game guarantee. We will, at any school at our level, really will pay perhaps a lesser quality opponent, probably the way to put it, to come, or a smaller school, really, a smaller program, mid-major, whatever you want to call it, to come play in your non-conference season. So you went to Wagner, so we're going to use Wagner as an example. So we play Wagner every year. We pay Wagner to come play us. It varies. I tell you, the great thing for Wagner, now again, I was the AD at St. Peter's, and my colleague Pat here was an AD at St. Peter's too in his past. I'm on the other side. We're on the other side of it there. We're getting paid. So perfect. So we're playing St. Peter's this year. Seton Hall plays St. Peter's in the first game of this year, November 4th. We're paying St. Peter's to make the trip from Jersey City to Newark. It might seem crazy to some. It happens across the board. That's how teams at the mid-major level really are. That's a huge financial line for them. I can tell you, when I was at St. Peter's, that money was, I would tell our head coach, listen, I need you to go out and play X amount of guarantee games, if you will, to make sure you brought in a certain amount of money, because we would use that money to really help balance the budget. So I can tell you that we have paid teams anywhere from $60,000 to $90,000 to come play us. It depends on how bad you need the game, because you're trying to build a schedule, and that's one of listen, coaching a men's basketball coach at the Division I level. It's all about 3 things. I always say it's all about 3 things: recruiting, and scheduling. Literally, that's the most important thing. You need to recruit and schedule. Your schedule's really a Rubik's Cube. You've got to figure out a balance. You've got to get those teams where you know you can get some wins, and you got to go play some of those teams so you have your metrics at a good enough level so you can get the NCAA tournament, and you have a good enough resume. So you really have to balance that out. So we play a lot of teams. And we try to do it with a lot of locals. And I can tell you, when I was at St. Peter's, and I'm sure Pat would tell you the same, when you're at St. Peter's, you want to play the locals and get paid because you're not spending any money on travel. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just have to get a bus and bring my guys over. In fact, I wouldn't even get a bus half the time. I just put them in vans, save every dollar I could, you know that. So just bring them over and play, as opposed to, when I was at St. Peter's, we went and played Auburn, and we got paid $100,000 to go play Auburn. I still had to fly there, so I'm eating into that profit a little bit. Now, again, Auburn paid for our hotel rooms and they paid for our meals, but you'll get that kind of stuff. And by the way, I'm giving you those numbers in basketball. I can tell you, our friends down the road at Rutgers, for football, you're paying hundreds of thousands, if not $1 million for certain games. So for football, yeah. So big payouts, right? So very big payouts. And the other question, talking about adding sports. No, it'll be real quick. Currently, we're at 14. That is the minimum you can have in the Division I. I'm really content at 14, to be perfectly honest with you, because I don't. Infrastructure-wise, it could be incredibly challenging for us to go somewhere else and add another sport. I hear about lacrosse all the time. I certainly know how popular lacrosse is. We had added lacrosse as a club sport to kind of really start to dip our toe in that water years ago. It actually did fizzle out, where we didn't have enough student interest at the time. Right now, number one, I don't even know where we'd play. We don't have a field for it. We'd have some challenges infrastructure-wise, but it's always something we'll look at. We'll always look to see where our sport offerings are, what makes sense moving forward to kind of adjust should we need, we need that. I say the best news, though, in that regard is you sometimes add a sport to help your enrollment, and enrollment right now at Seton Hall is incredibly healthy. So as long as that can keep going, that's a good thing. So, I'm sorry, No, no, NIL, no. And somebody did answer that question with NIL about agents. And to that point, yes, you can hire an agent as a student athlete now. That is legal in your NIL discussions. There is a marketplace where you have to be an agent registered through the NCAA, but you can be hired is what I meant to answer that before. Sorry.
How you doing? I have a few questions. First of all, you talk about 3.65. Is that cumulative throughout the whole 14 sports program?
Correct.
Okay. So my next question of that, what's your graduation rate? Is that important today, or it doesn't really matter because, especially in basketball, with the guys moving on, like, Richardson moving, what's his, third school in 3 years or whatever? Do you evaluate it from that perspective? And is that evaluated towards your being an AD, because a lot of schools, we have 100, we have 85%, we have 90%. What is Seton Hall's percent of graduation, or staying here for 4 years?
Yeah.
I know basketball because of this, but, I guess swimming and other sports like that. You maintain, how many people stayed here through the 4 years?
Right. Yeah, I could definitely answer that one.
Okay.
I'm
sorry.
Now, or you want to have
No, go ahead. No, I'll pick it back.
So a question about graduation rate. So in athletics, we've measured through the APR, which is our academic progress rate. It's not as heavily used a tool as it used to be because of the exact factors you've talked about, right? Transfer rates and all that kind of stuff affect your APR. But I can tell you our APR is the top 10% in the country. We have a tremendous, our student athletes do graduate. In certain sports, yes, you're going to have fluctuation in that, which will affect that rate. But yes, we rank in the top 10%.
So now we're talking about, I'm specific because I'm a basketball, and I know Shad. I got many years when he came same path with Kevin. But anyway, make a long story short, here's my next question. How many special admits you have for basketball? Special admits that would get in with now, if they were a student and now they're an athlete. And how do you evaluate that? Do you take 3? And are all your basketball players on scholarship?
So, and we have 13 scholarships in men's basketball. So all of the athletes, for the most part, except for walk-ons, are on scholarship. You can take a walk-on student athlete. We currently have, I believe, 2. Yeah, we had 3 last year. I think we're only gonna have 2 this year. But again, the roster can shake up any time. I will tell you, when I put that GPA up there, our men's basketball team has a cumulative GPA on the team of over a 3.0. We actually recruit very good students, so that special admin thing is really not as much of a challenge. Occasionally, yeah, in some of your sports, like, will that happen? Sure. Yeah, absolutely. But I would tell you that every student athlete we recruit to Seton Hall really does a tremendous job.
This is a couple other questions. I don't understand about the NIL.
Better take turns.
The NIL, how do you evaluate, like, the first player, like Kadej Richardson's, or your top players? How do they get paid more than the 12th kid on the team? Or is that because they make a separate deal? That's what I don't understand.
Okay, so I'll finish up with that one, then, no problem. NIL, and how they get paid? Guess what? I don't know. I don't want to know. And that's partly a joke. Truly, that is handled by the collective to the player. They have their own representation. They work that out. I do not get involved in that space. I don't want to get involved in that space. I don't think there's an AD in the country that wants to get involved in that space. They work that out specifically with the collective who's going to pay them, and either if they have an agent representation or all that kind of stuff. That's done separately. So I truly don't get involved in that space if I don't have to. Certainly, I think across the landscape, if you were to start to research it, you'll find that your point guards probably make more money than your strong forwards and so on and so forth. But it's all variable and determined within those collective organizations.
Thank you very much. We have one more.
Sure.
From the computer.
Okay.
The last 2 questions.
All right, no problem.
Thank you, George.
You got it.
Rick, did you have a question? Rick?
Yeah, thank you, Brian. Very interesting presentation. Congratulations on such a great student athlete program. I'll say that I have my master's from Seton Hall and I have my undergrad from Holy Cross College. I took a little exception to the term you use, bid stealer, and the reason why is, example, Holy Cross women were seated 16th in the NCAA this year, and playing #1 Iowa with Caitlin Clark against a very heavy hometown crowd. And I thought they held their own, at least for the first half of the game. And the Holy Cross women did win the Patriot League, and I thought they deserved to be at the NCAA tournament. And I understand it, other good, very good teams better than Holy Cross were left out of the tournament. But anyway, that's just my opinion, in terms of using that, bid stealer, term. And so just my opinion, and thanks for hearing me out on that.
Yeah, no problem. I'm glad you brought it up. No, I mean, bid stealer is not meant to be derogatory in any way. I actually am a full proponent of that rule that I mentioned. In fact, there are a lot of people that want that rule changed. I'm not one of them. I believe if you win your conference tournament, you have earned the right to make the NCAA tournament. It just kind of screwed us. That's really the only problem I have with it is just because some like NC State this year, if you saw the run they went on, and I could list a couple other teams that won their conference tournaments, they took the opportunity. They took a bid away from a team like ourselves who would most likely have gotten an at-large bid. So congratulations to Holy Cross, number one. And I think if you ever win your conference tournament, that is a tremendous feat and should get the opportunity to go play in the NCAA tournament. So it's not a bad thing to be a bid stealer. I think it's an impressive feat if you can do it.
Pat Moschetti, also from New Providence, so thank you for coming today. My question is regarding the athletic department staff support. Outside of the coaches and the assistant coaches and the administrators, can you just list for us the job titles of the other support group, and does that include a full-time nutritionist?
I mean, yeah, as I said, we have a staff of close to 90 people, probably in which about 70 full-time. You believe it or not, we have volunteer assistant coaches, which is a very common thing that make up predominantly the rest of it. We have, if I could just kind of give you the quick hierarchy. So you have obviously myself. I have 2 deputy athletic directors, which are kind of, I have my one deputy really oversees all the external operations, oversees our NIL relationships, our media, our communications, our fundraising, our marketing. He oversees that side of the shop. And then I have another deputy AD who oversees compliance and internal operations. Compliance being all of the NCAA regulations, student athlete welfare, all of that kind of thing. And then from down on, there's staffs with underneath those. We have associate ADs, assistant ADs, senior associate ADs with all in those areas. But to your point, you mentioned nutritionists, for example. We have a full sports medicine staff. It's about 7 or 8 people in that department that are full-time athletic trainers that really focus on the care of our student athletes as a full-time job. Athletic training, I can't begin to tell you how critically important that is. And it's an industry that really is tough to find people nowadays. It's one that we need more and more people to get into athletic training because it's a job that has kind of, we've seen a real decline, if you will, of applicants for that role. But yeah, within that area, we'll have some part-time folks that come in and help us, a nutritionist, sleep experts. We'll bring in people. So we have a really good partnership at Seton Hall with RWJ Barnabas Hospital. They're a sponsor of ours. They're a good partner of ours. We have our doctors. We have team physicians that come in to visit. Like if you're a student athlete at Seton Hall and you need to see a general physician, we have a general physician that comes in once a week and books up. If you've got a cold or whatever you might be, outside of kind of the athletic training injury kind of thing, we have somebody there. A chiropractor comes in once every couple of weeks. Acupuncturist comes in a couple of times a week. So we have all of the medical services you can imagine provided to our student athletes, specifically through our RWJ Barnabas relationship. But then between coaches and administration, that's what makes up the rest of the department. All right. We had one more here.
Thank you for a good talk. I want to ask a question not about Seton Hall, but Dartmouth men's basketball team. Sure. They unionized. They're now employees. How do you see this impacting college sports, or is this going to be like a one-off and it'll burn out real quick? And then the other thing with athletes getting paid, why are we still giving scholarships out? I mean, they can afford it. Isn't this more like the rich getting richer or something? So I'd like your comments on those 2 things.
Steve knows how to bring it home, doesn't he? Man, Steve, you really, I thought I was going to get out of here unscathed. Well, it's a great point. No, I do not think, by the way, that I would not marginalize the Dartmouth situation. I mean, listen, it happened in Northwestern football. They wanted to unionize, and that became a big lawsuit. That's all played into this. I think that Dartmouth lawsuit plays into all of this. I think the argument on whether they should be employees or not, I know a lot of ADs that really feel strongly that that should be the case. I don't know if I'm 100% there. I don't think the student athlete wants it, number one. In fact, I'm pretty positive. We have conversations sometimes within our own athletic department with student athletes. They're like, we don't want it. We're not looking for that. Because again, don't forget, if they become an employee, I'll treat them like any other employee, which means we could fire them if the performance isn't there, right? I mean, that's I mean, I hate to say it like that. It's not a threat in any way, but I think student athletes realize that, like, there's a detriment to be considered an employee, right? It's a pretty good, to your point, it's a really good deal being a student athlete. I hate to speculate, but I mean, if you go back to the beginning of this argument, this movement, if you will, of NIL, paying players, I don't feel that the narrative that you just brought up ever really caught much steam. And I don't put blame on that on anybody. Listen, we're part of the membership, which may be all of our faults. But you make a great point, right? They're getting a college education in a lot of cases, not all cases, but in a lot of cases for primarily very large, the footballs, the basketballs, baseball, a lot of these sports. You're getting a free college education. That's a lot. That's a big deal. I know I'm paying for one right now for my son, and it's expensive, right? So you're getting a college education. You're getting all of these amenities that I think I just kind of almost summarized, right? I talked about acupuncturists visiting campus spas, and you're getting all the access to all of the greatest, amenities you can imagine as an athlete, because you can put a ball through a net, hit a ball, hit a ball really far, whatever it might be. You've got this opportunity, that gets lost a little bit, right? It gets lost, that great opportunity that they're having. But I guess I go back to the original point of the idea of NIL was they should, though, still have the same rights that a general student would have with name, image, and likeness. Now, I also pointed out that really hasn't happened in the way, it's happening, but it's become something else. I think if on the foundation, if we had that happening, it makes a ton of sense. And we really kind of have the best of both worlds here for a student athlete, but it's not the reality. And that's a challenge because, I think they're getting a great deal, and I'm happy that we provide that to them. And then again, the other side of that argument, let's not lose the other side of that argument here. I don't want to sound like I'm super one-sided here. The other side of that argument is like, listen, I play football for X university or basketball for X university, and you're making money on me because I'm on TV every day, and I'm going out there and I'm representing this school for this university, and I probably provide more marketing dollars to this school than anybody else can do. Sadly, no one cares about the chemistry department. Sadly, nobody cares. It's true, right? But and you could combat that argument with saying, but you're getting a free education. But that balance, it's not there. It's just not there. It's not there anymore. I think a lot because of so many lawsuits that we've kind of talked about. So that's where we are. And I still think we're going to survive it. We're going to get through it. I think we're going to go through massive change over the next couple of years like we already have. I still think at the end, this will find a way to balance itself out some way, shape, or form, but it's just going to look very different. But at Seton Hall, we'll always remain committed to that student-athlete experience. We'll always remain committed to making sure that they have that experience, to make sure they go on and be successful and contribute to this society. And at the same time, if you've got to pay them a couple bucks to get it done, that's what's going to happen now. So, but we're looking. I really appreciate this. Those are, by the way, you guys brought some great questions. I really appreciate it. I appreciate the time you gave me today. I welcome you to come to a Seton Hall game anytime. I'd love to have you. And as always, as we say, go Pirates. Thank you, Pete. I appreciate it very much. Thank
Okay. I have a question. Do you think that the NIL is going to kill small programs? It looks as though anyone who's good and in the mid-majors transfers up because of the money to things. So what's going to happen to those smaller schools in the mid-majors? And two is this money taxable? And are you guys going to have to do the reporting to the federal government?
Tom's not letting me out of here. Great points. So, number one, I say this all the time in my circle. I always look at folks and I say, I'm waiting for that, and there might be a couple small examples, but I'm looking for that mid-major that might have like that real big, donor or some sort of profile that decides, hey, you know what, I'm going all in. And I'm going to support, I'm going to make sure that at a mid-major level, I'm going to go pay all these student athletes. We haven't really seen it, like where it kind of launches the mid-major to kind of then become this whole other thing, because in so many ways it could help a program. I don't know if it ever will happen. I think it's just going to kind of be that vicious cycle. I think the rich will get richer. I think the football schools will continue to prosper. I think the schools at our level will continue to be incredibly competitive. I think the mid-majors, they're a feeding ground because of the transfer portal, right? I mean, I can tell you we have an Old Dominion, we have a student athlete from this year who's going to be a good player for us. We've got, others from Gardner Webb, all those other schools. And we certainly have ones from bigger programs like Ohio State. But those smaller mid-majors are becoming those breeding grounds, the minor leagues, if you will. If there's somebody really talented, they're going to go make money at a next level. I don't see that stopping. I just think the cycle will just continue. And to your other point, yes, student athletes get taxed on those dollars. That is another big part of the education. Someone asked about educate. It was on Zoom. We not only educate on financial, literacy and all these kind of things. We educate on paying taxes. We have all kinds of things to teach them how they have to pay their taxes. So because if they're making money through NIL, they have to pay taxes. So.
All right, well, Bryan, thank you very much for your speech. We have two ways to thank people. It's a certificate, which has the orchard, at Summit one time was the orchard capital of the East. So here's a certificate. The other way is the Old Guard salute.